Just last week, Aaron Sparrow and I were out there speculating that something bad was probably happening at Boom Studios, and today we got the finality of what that is. It's actually a buyout, a takeover of Boom Studios. Lots of people likely losing their jobs, and who's better to talk with that? The man that used to work Boom Studios as their major publisher of their Disney line and all that kind of stuff, Aaron Sparrow. Shocking news coming out here today.
I mean, not terribly shocking considering the state of the industry, but a surprise to be sure. And for most people, not a welcome one.
I think it's shocking that Penguin Random House would want to own a comic book publisher.
That is shocking. It is strange that, because you get into the issue of like, well, what exactly is it that they're buying? I mean, they're buying a name, obviously, but not like a huge name or a name that has a particular amount of prestige or renown to it. It's just a name. They're buying a buttload of useless IP, mostly, culled from movie scripts that were in the never going to get made pile. And then, hey, I'll buy those cheap and we'll turn them into cheap storyboards so we can go and we can present them to movie studios and try to, get things made, of which, all their effort, they got exactly one book made, which was, Two Guns. That's the only movie that they ever got made. And then a couple of licenses maybe that transfer over, like I guess Penguin Random House can do Power Rangers now. But aside from that, like what are they really buying? But who knows what
something is killing the children, which was hot 3 years ago.
Maybe, but like nobody talks about now.
No.
All those Stephanie Phillips books that we were told sold over 100,000 copies, but not one person ever talks about them.
Grimm, I think that's the one, right?
Yeah.
Which
again, you're buying a property. You're buying a property that already that has the name of a property that's already out there, that has done far better and has far more name recognition, which was the TV show Grimm, starring David Cantoli. So what are you buying? You're buying a Grant Morrison story where, it's like, yeah, we finally landed Grant Morrison to work for Boom Studios. And he didn't even come in and create some original, sci-fi crazy concept for you. He was just like, I'll just tell a story about Santa. And then, Netflix's Klaus came out and did the same thing. And it's just like, what are you getting? But I imagine there's something in it for him, or maybe they just got it so cheap they couldn't say no.
These are the details that we do know. Comic book publisher Boom Studios has been acquired by Penguin Random House in a major shakeup for the comics world. This marks the latest behind-the-scenes change for Boom since the company's founding in 2005. More recently, 20th Century Fox purchased minority stake in the publisher in 2017. After they held the company's first look deal for several years, that ownership later carried over to the Walt Disney Company following their 2019 acquisition of Fox's assets. We do know that obviously Penguin Random House is an enormous name in publishing, maybe not in comic books, but they've been in distribution for a little while now. Perhaps it'll be good for comic books. It'll be more stability.
Maybe. I mean, one good thing is that it's moving Boom immediately away from Diamond, which is basically a dying distributor of comic books. So they'll be moving that over to Penguin Random House. So again, we're kind of like getting into a situation where there's less distributors, which of course has its pros and cons for publishers. But the more stuff that you have under one publishing house, obviously, the better discounts retailers can get. On occasion. So maybe that helps retailers, which would be nice. It'd be nice if something that was done in the industry actually helped retailers for a change, because Marvel and DC certainly ain't doing it. But I mean, I think it's a net negative. Obviously, a lot of people at Boom are going to lose their jobs because now their positions will be redundant. I don't know how many people are still there from when I worked there, but there's definitely a couple that deserve to lose their jobs. And then there's, at least one or two that I think deserve to, hopefully go on to bigger, better things with bigger, better companies. But comics is in such a bad state right now. Like, where do you go? Do you jump to DC? Is that better? I don't think that's better.
Well, I don't think this is better simply because when Disney buys Marvel, Marvel is a big brand in comic books. And certainly became a big brand in movies, but even it's underneath the Disney brand. It's one of several IPs that they have. You look at DC over at Warner Brothers, they got bigger franchises out there with Harry Potter and that kind of stuff. It goes under Penguin Random House. Do I all of a sudden think Penguin Random House is going to give three flying fucks about comic books and the health of the industry? Absolutely not.
No, and I don't think that I don't think Penguin Random House is probably particularly interested in these IPs as movie properties either. I mean, maybe if somebody wants to come along, but is there even anybody at Random House that goes out and is going to be like, hey, this Berserker book, Keanu Reeves was attached to it. He might still want to do it all these years later after everybody, stopped caring. Are they going to bring back Cold Space with Samuel Jackson? Are they going to try and launch Stephanie Phillips Grimm? Are they really going to do any of that? Like, I don't understand. I think that we need to see more details come out before I can fully wrap my head around what it is exactly that Penguin Random House saw as the advantage to buying this company.
I imagine it's because they were really cheap and they were about to go under, and that was the best deal that was out there. They're like, hey, we can get a publisher on the cheap, another brand to throw into the house of IPs there that they have. And maybe they can take a couple of ideas in comic books that have been hits. Maybe something is killing the children or the House of Slaughter, like lore or whatever, and make books out of it. Does James Tynion want to be an author? I imagine he does.
Maybe. Yeah, I imagine so. But I feel like they could have just reached out to him and said, like, hey, you want to do this?
Yeah, so it's pretty wild just kind of coming out of left field here, but we could kind of see the writing on the wall. Philip Sablik was leaving, and he'd been a major player over at Boom for a while. I guess Ross
Lance
Ritchie,
Kreider jumped back to Dark Horse from where he was poached.
Yeah, Lance Kreider just left, which I guess at the time was seen as an enormous blow to Dark Horse. It doesn't feel like it really affected them, though.
It didn't really affect them. I don't know that it benefited Boom all that much. I think the only thing that they really got was they stole Elric away from Dark Horse for a brief time, and it did absolutely nothing for them. Unfortunately, as much as I like Elric, it's never been a big deal. It's never been like a Conan license or anything like that, which is a shame in a lot of ways. But yeah, I'm actually kind of shocked that Dark Horse took him back, because it was pretty contentious. I was at Boom at the time that Lance jumped over, and I remember it was a pretty contentious thing.
Now, you mentioned your years at Boom Studios. Is this the type of occurrence or event that would make you want to go back to Boom, or less apt to go back to them? Do you think this is going to be a better situation or worse?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that like everybody that I wouldn't want to work with is going to be fired because they're going to be redundant. So whoever it is at Penguin Random House that's put in charge of Boom, I'd certainly be willing to entertain some offers. But again, I don't know what I would do for them, and I don't know what they have that I would be interested in.
Well, a lot of the people that you specifically had issues with have already kind of been demoted or kicked out or whatever. I know Ross is somebody that you weren't entirely happy with. Chip Mosier is somebody that was kind of a cancer at Boom Studios for quite some time.
Speaking of things that nobody's talking about, Distillery. But yeah, it's so a lot of people there, but it's like Matt Gagnon, I never had any respect for as a person or as an editor or editor in chief. It's like it's tough when you've come from publishing companies and you're actually a published writer and you've actually worked in that field, and then you're taking orders from a guy who used to order the comic books at Meltdown, and now he's the managing editor and he's supposed to tell you how publishing runs. A guy that comes out of his office and demands to know why they're making references to Lost in a Muppet book that's set in Arthurian times, and you're like, have you ever seen the Muppets? And he's like, no.
Pop culture joke.
Yeah, it's a pop culture joke, because that's what the Muppets are about. It's an anachronism. That happens in the Muppets. Or a guy who's going to tell you how to how Pixar books should be done when he's never seen a Pixar movie. Just those sorts of things. So hopefully he's on his way out to go work at a gas station somewhere. But I'm sure he'll land on his feet. I'm sure that some company will snap him up and he'll start bringing his special brand of incompetence to wherever he lands. That seems to be the trick in the comic book industry. You seem to fail upwards a lot of these times.
We've seen a lot of acquisitions over the years. We had the Dark Horse acquisition, by that company in Scandinavia. What was it?
Embracer
Group. We've seen this acquisition. There was already a minority stake. DMG acquired Valiant Comics. I think everybody thought that they were buying these IP farms that were going to come up with these great concepts for streaming and in movies and all this kind of stuff. And it really hasn't worked out. So I am a little bit surprised that the acquisitions are still going on, seeing as what has happened, with IDW, where they kind of killed themselves not being acquired. What happened with Embracer Group, what's happened with DMG and the failure eventually of Valiant Comics. Like, I don't see the inherent value in buying a comic book publisher unless you're a comic book company at this point.
Yeah, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. But like I said, maybe the reasons will become clearer in the coming days. The people that I really feel sorry for, and this was a big thing at Boom when I was there, and I don't know if this continued on after I was left, but the idea of I often rail against companies when they tell you, we're a family. Because what that is that's always, hey, we need you to work late. We need you to sacrifice.
We need to do something that's bad for you and good for us.
Yes, exactly. That's when you're a family. But the moment you need a sick day or you got something going on and you need
mom's got cancer and you need 2 weeks to go and help her
or
out.
You've just been told that you might have stomach cancer and they need to do more tests and then you get fired, which does and has happened at Boom. Then all of a sudden the family thing goes out the window. So hopefully none of these people that work there, your rank and file editors, your people that were overseeing the actual production of the books, hopefully none of them had been sold that bill of goods or believed it. Because here we go, we're a family, but guess what? Dad's selling the house and you guys are all out on the street. But maybe he got a financial windfall from it, and that's really what matters, because that's what you were always working for. You were working for the greater glory of Ross Ritchie.
It's family when it benefits us, but when it benefits you, I'm sorry, this is just a business decision. It really is nothing personal, right?
Yeah, just gonna have to.
Sorry
let you
about
go.
that stomach cancer you might have, but it's going to be affecting our bottom line, and it's not really going to work in with our plans anymore, Mr. Sparrow.
That's right. You might need to take some time off, and we just can't have that. We want to offer you $800 to sign this very restrictive NDA because we want to take care of you.
Did you sign it?
No.
I guess that's all we can talk about.
I lifted it up. I looked at the check. I lifted it up. I looked at the check. It was $800, and I set it back down, and I turned it around on the table, and I pushed it back, and I said, "You guys obviously need this more than I do." And then I went to my girlfriend's house at the time, and her dad was an entertainment lawyer, and I called him. And he goes, do you have a copy of it? And I go, like, yeah, I have a copy of it, because they gave me a copy, and then the one that was attached to the check that I didn't sign, and I faxed it over to him. And he immediately called me back and he was like, "You didn't sign this, did you?" And I'm like, "God, no. What do you take me for?" And he was like, "Oh, good." He goes, "This is the most retarded thing I've ever seen." He goes, "I feel like they just got this off of, I don't know if he said LegalZoom, but he like something like that. He was like, I feel like they just, got this off of LegalZoom.com and just sort of like tried to modify it." But he goes, this is awful.
So any personal feelings about this? As somebody that went and gave his heart and soul to the company and then was basically blindsided and backstabbed after you saved their Pixar license, which they blew up in the end anyway. Working with all those great people, because I know you're still friends with Jesse Blaze Snyder and a lot of the other people that worked with you at Boom Studios. So obviously there are some fond memories, but you also work for a lot of assholes. Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely people that I care about there. Not that I've talked to them in a few years, but obviously I've always praised Daphne Plebin as being a fantastic editor. I think that I hope that she lands on her feet. I hope that she finds something that's really a good position for her and is really fulfilling and allows her to be creative, because she was one of the best creative minds when I was there, and was always kind of like mistreated. It was one of the first times that I ever really saw like the boys club in any company just go, kind of like full misogynistic with their attitude. It's like she didn't get treated the same for the longest time. I had to prove herself much harder because she was a woman, but she was the sharpest editor there. I've said that on numerous occasions. So obviously there's people like that. Everybody that I cared about, kind of came with me. When I got fired from Boom, every single one of my creative people that I worked with called and told me they had my back, whatever I needed. Well, there's only one that didn't, and that was Grace Randolph. But every other single person that I worked with made sure to reach out and say, like, whatever you need, we would love to work with you again. We appreciate what you did for us. We got your back. And to a person, every single one of them has maintained that. Obviously I still work with Jesse Snyder. Obviously Nate Watson, who did Toy Story for me. He's doing covers for Kneel Before Doomface. He's doing stuff for me. I've got him on other assignments with other clients. I look out for people who look out for me. Unlike that company loyalty that you're supposed to have where you're family, I actually do try to build real family amongst my creative teams. So we look out for each other. So you had one of those Tom Cruise moments where you're like, I know everybody thinks I'm just going to freak out. Who's coming with me? And they actually left with you? Yeah, well, I mean, no, people still did work for the company. I never asked anybody to walk away from a paycheck. But they didn't have a great attitude towards the company after that. And, most of them got away as quickly as possible. Actually, somebody that I worked with, Marcio Takara, went on to do just amazing stuff. And I'm the person that pushed him. He was doing The Incredibles for me and just doing an amazing job. His Incredibles work was incredible. But
he would show me samples of like his superhero stuff, and he was like, I'd kind of like to get over and do one of the Mark Waid books. And I kept pushing him to Matt. And Matt kept saying no. Same thing with Nate Watson. Nate Watson wanted to do a Mark Waid book. Nate's not ready for prime time. And then Nate went and worked for Lucasfilm under George Lucas for several years, designing ships and things. So you don't get much more prime time than that. So it just goes to show you kind of the stupidity. But eventually, Boom, when I left, Boom got into a serious bind with Incorruptible and brought Barcio on, and he knocked it out of the park. And he's still doing great work to this day.
Absolutely. So there you go. Boom Studios is now acquired by Penguin Random House. It's going to be distributed by them. A major shakeup in the comic book industry. Boom had been climbing up there. It looked like they were going to surpass IDW as the number 4 publisher. Unfortunately for them, it didn't really last after the pandemic stopped happening. Everything kind of opened back up, and Boom's kind of went back down to challenging Dark Horse for the number 5 or 6 publisher out there, which isn't the worst place in the world to be, but I do think the comic book industry is probably in a lesser spot because of it in the end. And I do appreciate Aaron coming on here, giving his perspective, somebody that worked at Boom in a leadership position, and obviously had some personal stories and all that good stuff too. And Grace Randolph was like, you know what, Aaron? I'm the one that got you fired. No?
I don't think that.
It was me.
I actually, for the record, I actually enjoyed working with Grace when I was at Boom. I tried to get her on other things because her Muppet book didn't exactly work out. The Muppet team did not love what she was doing, so it was kind of like a rough working relationship. But I kept trying to get her on Pixar stuff up until the point that I got fired. I got nothing there. But it would have been nice to get a phone call. It would have been nice to know that I wasn't just seen as a stepping stone to get to what you want to do. That you actually had some empathy for me as a human being. Would have been cool.
I do want to say, if you like Aaron and I cutting the breeze and just having a good time, shooting the breeze, I guess, or cutting the cheese. I kind of combined the two, which is kind of weird.
What are we doing?
I guess. You do need to go over to Think and Critical Patreon, where we have a podcast every single week called The Geek Fix. It's exclusive to there. It's another 2.5 hours of content. Lots of fun there. There's a link in the video description for more Wes and Aaron in their finest, cutting the breeze